If you've ever chosen a text for a reading lesson because it fits a particular skill or strategy, let's say it lends itself to predicting or cause and effect, I get it. I've done that too. But I've learned that comprehension instruction shouldn't start with the skill. It should start with the text. We don't choose texts just to check off a strategy or a skill. We choose our texts because there's something in them we want our students to learn, whether that's something related to fiction or to nonfiction. The skill or the strategy is not the compass. The text is. Start with the knowledge the text holds, and then decide what skill or strategy will best help students understand it. In this video, I'll walk you through how to use an editable lesson template. It will help you plan where comprehension support is needed before, during, and after reading. If you're new here, my name is Anna Geiger. I'm the author of Reach All Readers and creator of the Reach All Readers course and podcast. And my goal is to help you understand and apply the science of reading. When it comes to teaching comprehension, here's what I've learned. We need to start with the text and not the skill. So instead of thinking, what's the best text to teach determining importance, or synthesizing, or even summarizing, we want to ask a different question. What specific knowledge do I want my students to gain? Which text will best help them gain that knowledge? And then how can I scaffold their reading so they actually understand and remember what they read? One resource that's really helped reshape my thinking on this is the Reading Comprehension Blueprint by Nancy Hennessy, where she walks through what makes comprehension so complex and helps us think about how to look at a text, to analyze it, and figure out what to pick out as teaching points. You'll also want to get the activity book that goes with it to see how it looks in practice to apply the principles from the first book. Now, as a reminder, and I've talked about this in previous videos, teaching comprehension is more than just reading a text to students or with them and then asking questions at the end. In fact, in my most recent video, I talked about the number one mistake to avoid when teaching comprehension, and that is saving all the discussion until after the reading is done. Instead, we can use questions to guide understanding throughout the reading. We can insert teaching moments right inside. But how do we decide what those questions and teaching moments should be? How do we know where to insert them? That's where it's helpful to look at the text with a plan in mind. Let's imagine I'm teaching second grade and I want them to better understand natural disasters. And we're going to start with earthquakes. So what you see here is the editable comprehension planning guide from my course, Reach All Readers, which I'm giving to you as a free download under this video, as well as this set of earthquake differentiated passages and responses, which I'll also give you access to. This is from my membership, Reach All Readers Plus. So if we look at this comprehension planning guide, we can see the first question is, what big ideas or understandings do we want our students to have after reading or listening to the text? This is a set of differentiated passages intended for kids late first grade through maybe fourth, fifth grade. And if we go ahead and look at, let's say, the third level passage, we're going to be using this with second graders. And as I look at this and I think about what the big ideas or understandings I want my students to have are, I can pretty much summarize the paragraphs. So I want my students to understand what earthquakes are, what causes earthquakes, how scientists study and measure the intensity of earthquakes, and how to stay safe during an earthquake. Now, when I look at text challenges, I've read through this already, and I've thought about how this paragraph contains some really important information about how earthquakes occur. But this is tricky information for students to follow, and I think in part because of this long sentence here. As the plates push against each other, pull away from each other, or scrape past each other, pressure builds up at the edges. That's a long sentence. There's a lot going on there. I think I can ask a set of questions to help students make sense of it. So I'm going to go to paragraph 2, and I'm going to write, what are tectonic plates? What are the 3 things the plates do? And I want my students to say, push against each other, pull away from each other, or scrape past each other. And then we're going to talk about what happens when they do these things. And finally, when the pressure is too strong, what happens? So after we've read this, we'll talk through these questions, and then I might continue with, have students turn and talk, explain how the movement of tectonic plates causes earthquakes. What vocabulary words will I teach? Well, I might want to teach a combination of Tier 3 and Tier 2 words. Tier 3 words are those words that are content specific. Think of them as science and social studies words, and I think we could call this a science passage, right? And so these bold print words are what I think of as our Tier 3 words. We want them to be able to define earthquake, tectonic plates, seismographs, and seismic waves. But I also might want to look for a Tier 2 word that will be useful for them to understand in different contexts. And the one I found is the word tremors, because tremor can mean different things in different contexts, and it's a word that they are likely to come across in listening or in reading. So let's go ahead and add the word tremor. What background knowledge would be helpful, and how will I teach it? I find that one of the quickest, easiest ways to build background knowledge before text reading is to show a short clip from a YouTube video and then ask questions about it. So if I go up here in our lesson plan, which is included with these passages, you can see that we've already found a video that you could use. So it says here to watch the following 3-minute and 14-second video. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to grab the URL. I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to have them listen for the answers to these questions. We've got a purpose for listening. What causes an earthquake? And where do earthquakes happen? When it comes to the purpose for reading, it really comes down to understanding these key ideas. The purpose for reading is to learn the answers to the following questions. So I want them to know, what are earthquakes? What causes earthquakes? How do scientists study and measure earthquakes? And how can we stay safe during earthquakes? Will I model and teach any comprehension strategies or use a specific process to help students understand the text? I usually recommend getting the gist, at least as you work through the paragraphs. There might be something else you want to try later, but I think it's a good first step. So I'm just going to go ahead and put get the gist. And in the lesson plan, we walk through how to help students get started with get the gist. Where will I stop to analyze text structure or ask questions? Well, we don't have to think too hard about this. We've already thought about it. Way up here with paragraph 2. So I'm going to say in paragraph 2, we are going to stop and work through the third sentence with a series of questions. Students will also work with partners to state what causes an earthquake. After reading, what questions will we ask? How will we review vocabulary, and so on? So I think it would be really good to take those vocabulary words that we've already chosen and go ahead and go into ChatGPT and ask it to prepare a set of fill-in-the-blank statements to help students practice those words. So give me a set of sentences where one of these words fits in each blank. The words are earthquake, tectonic plates, seismograph, seismic waves, and tremor. This should be appropriate for second grade. All right, so let's see what it comes up with. Perfect. I'm going to grab these and I'm going to put them here. I think, of course, it's also helpful for students to answer questions about the text. And I have those right up here in the lesson plan. So I can go ahead and take the after reading questions here and simply paste them into my editable lesson plan template. Finally, I'm going to have an exercise called Because But So, which you may be familiar with if you know about the Writing Revolution, another excellent resource for helping students with their comprehension through writing. You see that in the response sheets following these passages, we already have an idea for Because But So, and that is earthquakes happen every day because. So I can work with my students to do that activity. So there you go. I've worked through the passage using this editable template. It didn't take me too long. And now I have a plan for the specific things I want to pull out of the text, the things I think that might be challenging and that I can support my students with through teaching, questioning, background knowledge building, and more. Okay, let's review what this looks like in practice. You decide what knowledge you want your students to gain, and you find a text that will give them that knowledge. You read the text carefully yourself first. You identify the big understandings you want your students to come away with. You figure out where the text might break down for them. Maybe there's some background knowledge you want to fill in. Or maybe there's some complex sentence structure or difficult vocabulary. You make a plan for addressing those things. You decide where to pause during reading, where to ask questions, where to have students turn and talk. And you make a plan for after reading activities, questions you'll ask, review opportunities you'll include, as well as writing opportunities that can extend and cement the understanding. The questions you ask as they're reading aren't just comprehension checks. They're scaffolds. They're there to guide understanding as it's being built. Today, I'm sharing this editable comprehension lesson plan template for free. You can find the link below this video. And if you like what you see, consider joining me for my Building Comprehension from the Ground Up workshop. We'll bust common myths about teaching comprehension, dial into what the research really says, and equip you with practical tools that you can implement the very next day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.